Blake Lively developed some feelings for for Justin Baldoni. Ryan Reynolds is now abusing his wife. That's scary. That's narcissism.
Ryan Reynolds is in a total meltdown right now after realizing Blake had genuine feelings for Baldoni from the very start.
He's basically saying, I will burn down my entire house. I will burn down your career.
And let's be real. It can't feel good finding out your wife was secretly into someone else all along. But maybe Ryan needs to look in the mirror, too.
Is Blake Lively a beard? Like, is she there just to produce kids and to give him that family image?
I'm not saying Blake's a saint. She's obviously got her own baggage. But come on, anyone stuck in a beard situation or a messed up marriage isn't exactly living her best life.
They're constantly making gay jokes, trying to kiss each other on camera.
No matter how perfect Ryan and Blake looked, they had some heavy problems. Definitely not your usual squabbles about who's cleaning up after dinner. Just imagine how stressful it is living with a man rumored to be exploring his sexuality. Yeah, that might explain a lot. Even after 8 years of marriage, Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni's relationship was way more than just strictly business.
What we are observing is essentially a ticking time bomb, a timer on Ryan Reynolds' ego.
During the filming of It Ends With Us, they formed a deep emotional bond, implying Blake's feelings went well beyond what the roles required.
Blake Lively has nothing to do with what is happening. Her husband has come undone. Blake Lively developed some feelings for Justin Baldoni.
This emotional affair, which didn't get much attention at first, became a huge point of contention once it was out in the open. What seemed like another Hollywood fling turned into a whole saga, full of betrayal, insecurities, and a nasty legal fight.
Has happened to her. She has, been in love with Penn Badgley from, Gossip Girl, then she got with Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, and if you think I'm just making this up, no. In that Monday documentary, she said, Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni. Mia Schachter pointed out that these two ex-coworkers acted like close friends long before Blake accused him of sexual harassment, which he denies.
All these people, they're on set, and their job is to sell that they're falling in love. And a lot of times, as we see with actors and actresses, it actually happens. And there's no question in my mind that Blake Lively caught real feelings for Justin Baldoni.
Although Blake claimed Baldoni crossed certain lines, people who followed this closely think we're looking at an emotional affair more than anything else.
He claims civil extortion, defamation, and that all of this really is about her wanting to have control of the movie.
The lawsuit that followed, and all its legal back and forth, seems to be the fallout from that emotional connection, an affair that blew up way bigger than anyone expected.
This isn't just a fluffy celebrity feud. The actual story is, I think, a lot darker and a lot more complex than that.
Once details of this thing started leaking, it became clear Ryan Reynolds wasn't just sitting on the sidelines. The media circus wasn't only about Blake's allegations or Baldoni's pushback. It was also driven by Ryan's own insecurities. And if you really look at it, the lawsuit and all its drama point to an affair that was never just some casual fling. It was something else entirely. As soon as Reynolds found out his wife was emotionally attached to Baldoni, he got obsessed with the idea that his perfect family image was in jeopardy. For Blake, maybe it felt harmless, but for Ryan, it was a major betrayal, leading him to go off in what many call an over-the-top reaction. From the start, it was obvious Reynolds was driving this whole situation. He kickstarted the lawsuit. While everyone was talking about the harassment claims, insiders say it was really Ryan's ego pushing it forward. He couldn't handle the idea that Blake might have fallen for somebody else. That sense of ownership and control pushed him to extremes, using the lawsuit to reassert his hold on everything. Instead of treating this like a genuine harassment case, Reynolds used the legal fight to send a loud message to both Baldoni and Blake. No one messes with his perfect facade. How he's managed things shows his main focus wasn't truth or justice, but making sure he kept control over his wife and his meticulously crafted reputation. For him, the lawsuit was a way to punish both Lively and Baldoni, like he could erase the emotional affair and bring the power in his marriage back to where he wanted it. What's even more disturbing is that his need for control went well beyond the courtroom. In the public eye, his moves have been just as manipulative. Sure, Reynolds comes off as a caring husband, but behind the scenes, his possessive streak seems to be a constant problem in his marriage. The way he tries to dictate how Blake is seen, both by the press and by herself, feels unsettling. And the fact he'd risk his career, reputation, and even his marriage just to keep a grip on Blake says a lot about his own insecurities. Look, Blake Lively isn't totally blameless here, but dumping all of this on her doesn't seem fair. While she definitely had a part in the emotional affair with Baldoni, Reynolds' manipulative tactics are clearly fueling this disaster. Candace Owens, never one to hold back, gave her take on the Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni saga. Owens says the whole lawsuit about Blake's emotional affair with Baldoni isn't what it looks like. While many people think Blake's just trying to control her own story in court, Owens insists Ryan Reynolds is the real mastermind behind everything. In her view, he isn't aiming to protect his wife or family, he's just feeding his own ego. She's convinced the true target of this legal action isn't Blake, but Justin Baldoni, and that Reynolds is doing everything he can to ruin Baldoni's career. Owens paints Reynolds as deeply insecure, someone who will do anything to keep his shiny image intact, even wreck other people. She says Reynolds orchestrated the media storm, using outlets like the New York Times to push a narrative that lines up with his fears. Blank audio. Sound. The piece that tore into Baldoni became the backbone of Reynolds' PR campaign, with Owens claiming his team led the smear effort that destroyed Baldoni's reputation. According to Owens, this media manipulation wasn't just random. It was a calculated play to tank Baldoni's career and protect Reynolds' fragile ego. Owens also claims Reynolds' reasons go way beyond the immediate lawsuit. She says his actions come from deep-seated insecurities tied to personal issues he's never dealt with. So the lawsuit isn't really about protecting Blake or clearing her name. It's about hiding Reynolds' own weaknesses. His public persona, this witty, lovable actor, doesn't match up with what's really happening privately. Owens suggests he might be covering up something bigger, that this isn't about loving Blake, but about keeping control of a life that's slipping away. The big question is why someone like Blake Lively, famous actress, seemingly perfect wife, would go for Justin Baldoni, a co-star she barely knew before It Ends With Us. Observers say it's part of a pattern of Blake getting emotionally attached to the men she works with. From Ben Affleck during The Town to Penn Badgley on Gossip Girl, Blake has a history of forming deep emotional ties with co-stars. Over time, it's clear that her professional relationships can turn into something far more personal. That means Blake's connection with Baldoni isn't random. It's part of a bigger trend. But this time it's different, because she was married to Ryan Reynolds, a guy who seemed like the ultimate devoted family man. Meanwhile, it sounds like Blake was in a marriage that didn't fulfill her emotional needs. Some people say she was basically acting as a beard, a woman helping maintain the illusion of a perfect family, while her husband might be dealing with his own desires, maybe even his sexuality. This beard theory isn't new, but it holds up when you look at the cracks in their relationship. Despite how polished they looked in public, you could sense something was off. Blake often played the perfect partner at events, boosting Reynolds' public image. But her dynamic with Baldoni was a stark change. He apparently showed her real warmth, making her feel valued in ways Reynolds didn't. While nothing suggests it was physical, that emotional closeness mattered to her. And it reveals that the glossy image of Blake and Reynolds as the it couple covered up something deeper and more complicated. Blake spent years in a role where she had to be the flawless spouse, mom, and Hollywood darling. Then Justin Baldoni came along, and he didn't treat her like a trophy. He actually saw her needs, rather than using her as a piece of his public puzzle. Reynolds has always been brilliant at shaping how the public sees him, so finding out his wife had a genuine emotional connection with someone else threatened his control. His response was basically to go on the attack. That lawsuit, the media spin, the takedown of Baldoni, it wasn't really about saving Blake's reputation. It was about Reynolds grabbing hold of a situation he couldn't wrap his head around. Blake's feelings for Baldoni weren't just another industry fling. They showed how dissatisfied she was in a life that somebody else crafted for her. Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman have had that playful, almost brotherly bond for years, which people love. But if you look closer, it might be more complicated. Reynolds doesn't hide how much he admires Jackman, but the way he talks about him is way warmer than how he talks about Blake Lively. They don't just banter and tease each other. There's a depth to their closeness that makes you wonder if it's more than mere friendship. Reynolds has raved about Jackman, calling him a total gentleman and one of the nicest guys ever. But it's more than polite words. There's genuine affection in his voice when he brings him up, which isn't as obvious when he talks about Blake. He's made remarks about Jackman that go beyond standard buddy talk, suggesting a bond may be stronger than what most guys share. For instance, Reynolds once said Jackman was the best part of his whole career and that their friendship meant everything to him. Those aren't just random compliments. They hint at a closeness you don't usually see in just pals. This is interesting when you consider how reserved he is about Lively. He's often guarded or distant in his comments about her, compared to how he gushes about Jackman. That contrast has fueled rumors that maybe there's more to Reynolds and Jackman than meets the eye. They've exchanged tons of personal jokes, and Reynolds jokes about their bromance, even hinting at a surprising level of intimacy. The flirty undertones have people guessing there might be something deeper going on. Speculation about Reynolds' sexuality doesn't just come from his playful vibe with Jackman, but also how he acts around Blake. While he tries to seem like the perfect dad and husband, he often appears cold and dismissive toward her. Meanwhile, he's open and affectionate with Jackman in a way he's never shown with Blake. This split has some folks thinking Reynolds could be denying his real feelings, which might explain the chaos with Lively and Baldoni. His bond with Jackman is key to understanding his emotional issues, suggesting bigger stuff is lurking underneath the surface drama with Blake. It also frames how he's behaved in the legal and PR showdown involving Lively and Baldoni. It's possible Reynolds is using his marriage to Blake as a cover, hiding whatever truths he doesn't want people to see. In that scenario, Blake is basically another pawn in his quest to keep his public image intact. It also begs the question of how much of his behavior springs from his own internal conflicts. His obsessive reaction to Lively and Baldoni might not be about protecting his family, but more about hanging onto a carefully staged persona that doesn't really fit anymore. Now, looking at Blake Lively's role here, there's a huge gap between how people see her in the media and her actual involvement. While many think she's a victim of Reynolds' issues, Candace Owens says Blake's more involved than people realize. Owens thinks Blake's emotional affair with Baldoni is at the center of all this, and it's not as simple as her just being controlled by Ryan. In Owens' eyes, Blake played an active part in that affair, and that complicates the whole "Blake is a victim" idea. Blake's emotional tie to Baldoni didn't just appear overnight. It developed while they were filming It Ends With Us, and as it got stronger, it was clear she was seriously into him. Sure, Reynolds saw it as a betrayal, but from Blake's standpoint, it was about finding someone who genuinely paid attention to her, something she might have missed in her marriage. So Blake isn't just some bystander in the lawsuit and press mess. She's right in the thick of the emotional drama with Ryan and Baldoni. The tricky part is that her public image as a victim is completely at odds with her private actions. On one hand, she's presented as the wife trying to salvage her family's perfect facade after stepping out emotionally. On the other hand, what she did with Baldoni points to a deeper emotional craving that her marriage wasn't meeting. This double-sidedness makes her role in all this more complex. While she may not have launched the lawsuit or harassed Baldoni, her part in the affair makes it hard to see her solely as a victim. Blake's emotional bond with Baldoni is bigger than anything Ryan's claimed about harassment. In the context of the legal and media spectacle, people paint the affair as her way of rebelling against Ryan's controlling ways. It's obvious Blake didn't just react to other people's moves. She made a real choice, probably driven by massive emotional frustration. That betrayal piles one more layer onto an already chaotic personal and public mess. Now you know why she gravitated to Baldoni. If you think that's the full story, let me know in the comments.